Cynicism of the highest order. During his visit to Beijing, Putin announced his preferred location for a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He says it's Moscow. The Kremlin dictator stated that the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, specifically asked him to hold a potential meeting with Zelensky, and furthermore currently claims he will indeed hold talks if the Ukrainian leader comes to Russia. At an improvised press conference with propagandists, Putin also said that the Ukrainian authorities should hold a referendum to resolve any territorial issues, and if it is not possible to settle the Ukrainian question peacefully, then, according to the dictator, it will have to be done by military means. Let me remind you, earlier the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, repeatedly expressed his willingness to meet with the President of the Russian Federation, but not in a terrorist country. There cannot be a meeting in Moscow, Zelensky said. The military parade in Beijing was the first place where Xi Jinping, Putin, and Kim Jong-un appeared together in public, and Donald Trump sent them his greetings. All the details about the parade and the culmination of China's attempt this year to present itself as the new world leader are coming up next from international correspondent Yana Slesarchuk.
Historical irony. With a parade dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, a bloc is being cemented that is preparing for a third. For the first time, they appear together on camera, Xi Jinping and his two most favored guests, Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. There are other guests here as well. For example, although earlier reports stated that he had cancelled his trip to China, the president of Indonesia did end up appearing in Beijing at the last moment. However, it was the dictators of the two countries currently most dependent on China who got to sit side by side with its leader.
Only when nations and their respective peoples genuinely treat each other as true equals, live together in peaceful harmony, and actively support one another in all endeavors, will we truly achieve collective security and effectively eliminate the fundamental root causes of war.
At the very same time as they all stand on the main podium and watch Chinese missiles, Russian ones are flying into Ukraine. But China has its own interpretation of what it means to treat other nations as equals. This is one of the oldest empires in the world, accustomed to seeing itself as the center of world order. After World War II, the Communist Party, which, after all, did not come to power without the help of the Soviet Union, finally replaced the monarchy in China and found itself in complete isolation. This situation lasted until the 1970s, and it was only under American President Nixon, who waited until Beijing had fallen out with Moscow, that relations began to warm. The recognition of Taiwan as the successor to a unified China was replaced by the recognition of the People's Republic of China, while simultaneously acknowledging the de facto independence of the island of Taiwan. Bringing it back under the full control of the mainland is one of the primary objectives that has been set by President Xi Jinping.
The great reunification of the Chinese people cannot and will certainly not be stopped.
He is very well aware that in Taiwan, people are watching this military parade with no less anxiety than they are the full-scale Russian war in Ukraine. That is precisely why Xi Jinping gladly welcomes Putin right after US President Donald Trump, both in Alaska and in numerous subsequent statements, did everything humanly possible to help the Russian dictator regain the significant international standing he had lost over many years of isolation. It is much more convenient to force Taiwan into unification through hybrid political means rather than by force. Intimidation is the main one among them. By labeling Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party as the party of war on social media and pro-Chinese TV channels, Beijing intimidated Taiwanese voters and prevented the party, which advocates for independence and closer ties with the West, from winning a majority in the parliamentary elections. Among other impressive military equipment, the parade features 2 advanced unmanned submarines. They can be equipped with powerful torpedoes or various mines, or serve crucial reconnaissance purposes. All of this is meant to make the island of Taiwan feel as uncomfortable as possible.
I truly think that these 3 prominent figures, Xi, Putin, and Kim, appearing together is a clear demonstration that they might indeed want to seize Taiwan by force and overtly threaten Western countries, thereby showing everyone that they are definitively joining forces.
There has been no official reaction from the European Union so far. Japan is observing the parade without making any comment. And American President Donald Trump on his social media network reminded Xi Jinping that it was the United States that had helped China free itself from Japanese occupation, and asked him to pass along his personal regards to Kim and Putin, while all three are seemingly conspiring against America. The United States and Taiwan still have a congressionally approved mutual assistance treaty firmly in place. However, observing former President Trump's behavior since his recent return to the White House, especially his handling of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, any other American ally on the entire planet has anything but complete and utter confidence that the United States will truly honor its commitments in times of significant trouble. This profoundly means that Xi Jinping's intimidation tactics hit the mark perfectly. Yana Slesarchuk, Pavlo Sadovnikov, TSN 1+1.
They dreamed of living to 150 years old. During a military parade in China, a microphone accidentally picked up an unofficial conversation between Xi Jinping and dictators Putin and Kim Jong-un. The three politicians were just ascending the Tiananmen Gate in Beijing to watch the ceremony marking the 80th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II. Bloomberg reports that the live broadcast of this segment lasted less than a minute, and the audio was occasionally interrupted. But during this discussion, the microphone caught Xi Jinping telling his colleagues, and I quote, "In the past, people rarely lived to 70, but today, at 70, you're still a child." Putin responded to him through a translator, saying that with the development of biotechnology, human organs can be constantly transplanted. People can remain young and eventually even achieve immortality. And to conclude, the leader of China added, "There are predictions that in this century, there will be a chance to live up to 150 years. It is noteworthy that both Putin and Xi are already over 70, and only Kim Jong-un is 41 years old." Footage of the appearance of the three authoritarian leaders spread throughout the Western press, with headlines about the formation of a new axis. The European Union's chief diplomat Kaja Kallas recently stated that they represent an autocratic alliance, actively and aggressively seeking a fast track to establish a new world order. So that was a kind of small talk about what's bothering Putin. What feelings did you have after their conversation, which accidentally made it into the broadcast? Please write your valuable comments and kindly like the video. It's really very important to us. Let's continue on with this. Ukraine will absolutely not give up its territories to Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky emphatically stated this in Denmark during a joint important briefing with Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. He further noted that no one can truly guarantee that Putin will not attack again, since he has repeatedly lied many times. Zelensky also reported that he will soon have a conversation with US President Donald Trump. Tomorrow, the president of Ukraine is heading to Paris, where Emmanuel Macron is waiting for him. The French president has invited fellow leaders of the so-called coalition of the willing to provide security guarantees for our country at the summit. What will be negotiated and whether there is already a plan will be reported by Radio Svoboda correspondent Zoriana Stepanenko.
Allies are preparing to once again discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. The most reliable of these is considered to be the Ukrainian army, and they are actively helping to supply it with what it needs. As part of the new initiative, weapons worth $2 billion have been purchased from the United States, Secretary General Lutz reported, and says that even more should be expected going forward. Europe is also preparing to play a key role in ensuring Ukraine's protection from a possible new attack by Russia. The President of the United States agrees that his country will contribute to security guarantees for Ukraine, but it is still unclear in what form and to what extent. Allies, Lutz said, are trying to clarify this today at the level of defense ministers and tomorrow at the summit of coalition leaders in Paris. It is possible that Donald Trump will also join the discussion among the Europeans.
Currently, Europeans, together with various other countries, are diligently finishing their important work at the level of chiefs of staff, defense ministers, and national leaders. Tomorrow, a truly significant meeting will undoubtedly take place, so I fully expect that tomorrow or in the very near future, there will be complete and absolute clarity about precisely what we can effectively do together. We can interact even more actively and collaboratively with the American side to fully understand what specific proposals they genuinely want to offer in terms of their significant participation in providing comprehensive security guarantees and precisely what that will ultimately look like.
The Secretary General, who will also be present at tomorrow's summit, considers the discussion about security guarantees for Ukraine to be especially relevant in light of a possible future meeting between Zelensky and Putin. The President of the United States is insisting on this meeting as part of his peacekeeping efforts. And while the Ukrainian president agreed long ago, in Moscow they say there is no agenda for such a meeting. Russia is simply not interested in peace. This is the opinion of a number of top European officials. Heiko Maas recently said Putin met with Trump in Alaska only to avoid sanctions. And now, for example, the German chancellor believes that the head of the Kremlin will only be ready for negotiations when it is beneficial for him. At the moment, according to Scholz, Putin is interested in continuing the war and seizing Ukrainian territories. And the head of the German government considers economic pressure on Russia to be decisive. Tomorrow, Merz will join the coalition of the willing online and will make the possible meeting between the presidents of Ukraine and Russia one of the topics for discussion.
Geneva will be an appropriate place for concluding the relevant ceasefire agreement.
I will once again propose to the so-called coalition of the willing to initiate this agreement there.
But the most important security guarantee we can provide right now is sufficient support for the Ukrainian army in its efforts to defend this country.
Will Donald Trump increase economic pressure on Russia? For now, this remains an open question. His finance minister said that the introduction of sanctions could be considered as early as this week. From Brussels, Zoryana Stepanenko, Marek Hajduk, Radio Svoboda, especially for TSN 1+1.